Good afternoon and welcome. This podcast is part of the work of the Victorian Bicultural Workers Network, facilitated by CoHealth's Bicultural program. Through these conversations, bicultural workers share their community's experiences of mental health, wellbeing and accessing supports. These stories are shared to help mainstream services better understand the needs, strengths and perspectives of refugee and migrant communities, and to reflect on how they can work more effectively and safely alongside them. Before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the lands of the Wurundjeri, Wurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and we acknowledge that this work takes place on stolen, unceded land. We recognise the enduring leadership, strength and wisdom of First Nations people in navigating, surviving and challenging colonial systems and in bringing divides to support the wellbeing of their communities. My name is Jasmine Phillips and I'm the Bicultural Program Lead at CoHealth. Joining me on the podcast today is Tenzin Khangsar. Morning, Tenzin.
Good morning.
Tenzin, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, your cultural background and your work.
Yeah. My name is Tenzin Lobsang Khangsar. I work as a bicultural worker. I also work as an interpreter. And I'm Tibetan community leader for many years.
Tenzin and I have worked together since I started at CoHealth 10 years ago and actually sat on the interview panel when I joined refugee health team at CoHealth. So we go way back and it's such a privilege to have this conversation with you today. I want to start off by talking about your community and what do you see as the Tibetan community's strength?
So the Tibetan community's strength is based on the culture, the rich heritage culture that we are inheritance from thousands of years ago, and the culture which is based on love and compassion and Buddhist science and Buddhist philosophy and psychology. So those are the strength of the Tibetan community. And that's where the Tibetan resistance and the Tibetan resilience have been very effective.
Thanks for sharing that. This podcast is talking about mental health and how different communities understand mental health and speak about it and their challenges in navigating and accessing services. How would you explain the Tibetan community's understanding about mental health and well-being?
So when we talk about the mental health, of course, every people in this world suffer despite the magnitude of the suffering. Many of the Tibetan has gone through very difficult period back in Tibet, where the communist China has occupied my country land. And during that occupation, many have been killed and many have been arrested and tortured. And every time they protest, they have been tortured, imprisoned, and men killed in prison as well. So the people who come to Australia, and they are lucky and the privileged one, who had, many of them were former political prisoners who have suffered immensely under the Chinese incarceration. Therefore, this trauma has been carrying until now. And so the mental health, as I was telling you before, that the resilience and the resistance of the Tibetan people, where they have been gone through so much torture, yet it's amazing to see that sometimes the high spiritual teachers, they seek kindness and compassion to your enemy. And when, even though your enemy is torturing you, you're showing their kind of love and compassion, and they fear that my love and compassion towards my enemy is deteriorating. That kind of wisdom and the kindness are there many Tibetans. And of course, as a human being, this anger will develop when someone take your everything, your land, your family, resources, everything. So it's a natural instinct to have that kind of emotional roller coaster. And this is very natural.
How does the community talk about their mental health if they're struggling themselves as individuals?
My community is a little bit intro. They usually don't talk much about their personal matter or the mental health issue.
So if somebody was really struggling, what would they do?
As they have gone through so much suffering, and it is very obvious that they have trauma and suffered a lot. So they say that seeking blessing from His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Buddhist teaching has helped them immensely to recover from that trauma, that negative emotional that they have in their mind. They've been helped by those teachings. So basically, often Tibetan people, we are very privileged to have such a spiritual teacher and rich heritage culture where we can seek mental health related knowledge from those spiritual teachers, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama and many other teachers, and who often teach about how to cope with the challenging situation, how to cope with your deluded mind, and those kind of things. And so that really helps overall Tibetan to overcome mental health issue.
As a bicultural worker and as a community leader, you see a lot of Tibetan community members struggle with settlement and navigating mainstream systems and learning the English language and just really starting life again in Australia. How do you think those experiences impact on people's mental health and well-being?
That's a very good question. After settled in the new country, not knowing any language, not knowing the system, it's a very challenging day-to-day life. So that's where myself as a bicultural worker and community leader, I've been helping them with their settlement in terms of finding the accommodation, in terms of navigating or referring to the health system, and also helping with the big issues like age amendment, name change, and citizenship, and then advocating with the utility companies, Centrelink, and Home Affairs. It's a great honor for me to be able to help my community who have been through enough of suffering, and now it's my time to give a bit of service and help for my community.
I wanted to ask as well, came up in a conversation the other day about the impact on young people and families when they're going through those experiences together. Do you have any reflections you'd like to share about how young Tibetans might be feeling and experiencing settlement and what kind of challenges they might be facing?
So it's an interesting question where I think young Tibetans now emerging or immersing into the Western culture, and they tend to forget about our rich heritage culture and the language. And so when they settle in Australia, I think I see like within a year or two, the Tibetan language that they speak gradually fading away, and they are more fluent with the English. And so the child who born here Tibetan, both parents are Tibetan, and the child who born here, they tend to speak more in English. So there's a cultural gap and understanding within the family. So it's quite challenging. And then also the mental health part is, in one way, they are like in a Western culture and Tibetan culture, but another way, they are neither fit into Western culture nor into Tibetan kind of. So it's a bit dilemma and confusion for them as well.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I've been thinking a lot about where young people fit into these stories the last few weeks as I've been doing interviews. I wanted to ask, what do you think are some of the challenges that people from the Tibetan community face when trying to engage with the service?
So one thing is some of the community member, they need a little bit of trust to the service. I've been working with Foundation House for many years. Those counseling and natural therapy at Foundation House, often I see that they have a lot of improvement in terms of their mental health and physical health.
So trust being a bit of a barrier that maybe the community doesn't trust the service straight away. Is there something about the way Foundation House offers alternative therapies that aligns with the Tibetans' worldview of healing and mental health that works?
The Foundation House service is very much aligned with the concept of Tibetan healing. And in Tibetan medicine, which is based on herbal medicine and natural therapy, we have more than 2,000 years of this ancient healing process of Tibetan medicine, and which is very effective. And even in India, it's very popular. So Tibetans been receiving those treatment. And similarly, after coming here and seeing the Foundation House natural therapy, they provide the similar kind of therapy to us. So the Tibetan, when they see this kind of therapy, they are very delighted as they are used to with this kind of treatment. And so they are very familiar and trusted. And then often with the counseling, which is not so familiar in the past, and because of the very minimal resources that we have in India. And so barely anyone gets any kind of counseling. But here we get a one-to-one counseling, which is very helpful to share their feelings and the emotional feelings that they have been holding for many years, and the experience of the imprisonment and the trauma that they've been carrying and they've been sharing with the counselor. And that really helps to relieve the burden that they've been carrying. Often this both mental and physical health, all are intertwined, and both are very much goes hand to hand. So if your mental health is weak, and then it often affect your physical health. If your physical health is weak, and that also impact your mental health. So these two can't be separated. These are very much intertwined. So whereas this foundation health providing mental health service through the counseling, at the same time providing this natural therapy for the physical, getting some acupuncture, cupping, and providing all this massage therapy, and then providing all this natural herbal medicine. Those are like very helpful for the physical point of view. And then on the top of that, mental health through counseling. These two works really well. So if other mental health service could provide similar to this, then I think that would be more beneficial for those mental health service provider.
You've talked about your role as a bicultural worker and a community leader in helping community members during their settlement. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of bicultural workers and what role you play in supporting the system?
Sure. As a bicultural worker and the community leader, I've been assisting with their settlements. So when I was a president of the Tibetan community of Victoria, we welcomed them at the airport, and we worked along with the AMS settlement. As a community leader, I have created a robust relationship with the many real estate agents around the Footscray area. It's very difficult to get a property if not having any rental history, not having any proper income and on settling. But good thing is, as I have traded this kind of relation for many years, and those property managers trust the Tibetan people. So in that way, I've been managed to secure hundreds of Tibetan to settle in the Footscray and surrounding area in the past. In the IMI card, their both names were put under family name. So even though they are under settling and they're eligible for the Halki card concession, but they're not getting, because the name on the IMI card are not matching with the settling name is not matching with the utility company. So often they don't get the concession. And then, of course, name, date of birth issue is a big thing in our community. More than 150 Tibetans have incorrect date of birth. So having wrong date of birth, the person don't get age pension on time. So I have a lady, she's 65 years old, but in her record, she's 45 years. So there's a 20 years gap. Right? And I've been working on that particular case for over 2 years. And similarly, after age of 50, often women's health check, mammogram, and then bowel screening, all of this mostly after the age of 50. And so if the person is already past 50, but in the record, if the person is below 50, so they don't, even though they are practically or reality, they are eligible, but in reality, they are not getting these services. So likewise, yeah, there are many others in terms of medicine and stuff.
I think what you've highlighted is there's a system gap. There's not a service that is funded within settlement or mental health or health services to do the work that you're describing. So what you're really talking about is community coming together and advocating and supporting families with that shared understanding of what the challenges are and the impact that has. Really important challenges to highlight and shared across a lot of refugee communities as well. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about before we wrap up our conversation for today?
Quite interesting that these days meditation and mindfulness, those are very popular throughout the world. These technique and practice the Tibetan been doing for thousands of years. I see the meditation and the mindfulness practiced in the Western culture is more tailored and simplified, which is great. And it's also working for the Western culture in the Western perspective. So I'm proud to inheritance this kind of culture and which I shared with the rest of the world.
That's beautiful. I love that. And so many learnings that could be adopted or considered in providing mental health care to all cultures, drawing upon the wisdom of the Tibetan people. Thanks so much for joining us today, Tenzin, and for sharing your incredible wisdom. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you for having me, Jess.